I cannot stop listening to songs.
Ever had a song get into your head and just won't shut up?
So powerful. I love this band.
But there are songs that are more than just earworms. They haunt you like an old lover. This week, one of our close friends came to stay with us. She was going through a bad breakup and didn't want to be alone.
Not easy at all.
No.
At some point, she asked to try out her ukulele, and she decided that she wanted to learn this very famous song by Fleetwood Mac.
Dreams.
She got completely obsessed with mastering it, practicing for hours on end. And the last time I heard this song being played over and over again was 1977.
Sorry, I don't want to get married.
Terrific. That makes two of us. Will you unzip me?
In February of that year, Fleetwood Mac released this album.
Annie and I broke up, and I still can't get my mind around that.
2 weeks later,
I'm sifting the pieces of the relationship through my mind,
my parents split up.
ruining my life.
And for the next year and a half that they were separated, I heard them playing this album
A year ago, we were in love.
over and over again. Especially this particular song. It literally became the soundtrack to their breakup, which might have had something to do with the fact that the subject of every song on the album was the breakups that every member of the band was going through at the time with each other. The album went on to sell over 40 million copies.
And the album of the year is Fleetwood Mac!
As well as being named one of the best albums of all time by critics. In 1976, singer Stevie Nicks and guitarist Lindsey Buckingham's 8-year relationship was on the rocks. Pianist and singer Christine McVie and bassist John McVie were getting divorced.
I was not spared at all. My best friend was having an affair with my wife, Jenny. That was all twisted too.
So they were also getting divorced. So naturally, the best way to deal with all that agony was to lock themselves into the cramped, windowless record plant studio for the next 9 months to record an album.
John and I did not talk. Stevie and Lindsay didn't get on very well either, but they used to fight, whereas John and I used to just avoid each other.
We never saw, there's no windows in this place. We never saw the sun. I didn't know what time of day it was half the time.
At some point during those long months, Stevie was able to slip off into an empty studio with a modest drum machine and her electric piano.
Go back and think about your really serious, passionate relationship of your life that completely falls apart. You don't see that person the next day. You don't see them the next morning.
She channeled everything she was feeling about the disintegration of her relationship with Lindsay into a song that she said took her 10 minutes to write.
I would spend 15 hours in the studio and everybody's completely upset, and go home and be back to work 10 hours later in a tiny room with a couch that sat 3 people and a chair.
Thunder only happens when it's raining.
When she played what she'd written for the band, they were underwhelmed.
Only love you when they're playing.
Fortunately, Stevie convinced them to record it. And the rest, as they say, is history. There are no rules in songwriting, but let's see if we can figure out a little bit of what has made this song so enduring all these years. So in the beginning, we have the rhythm section making a lot of space, most of that for the vocals that are going to come up here in a second. Lindsey Buckingham starts to do these very dreamy kind of guitar fills. Instead of the traditional attack where he picks a string and we get this sharp attack and then start to decay, he's using a volume pedal to make the notes swell in a very kind of haunting way. Stevie Nicks wastes no time. We understand perfectly where we're at, either they're breaking up or getting close to breaking up. What she's doing is outlining what we call a minor pentatonic scale. It's this kind of vagueness to the tonality. We're in A minor and she just keeps hammering away at this scale, this A minor scale the whole time, while the bass just keeps thudding away on that F and G, F and G. And that is kind of an underlying reason why the song is haunting. It never feels like it's really resolving, except a bit when we get to the chorus, but in a surprising way. It actually uses falsetto. funny thing is that for the first time when she sings this line, she does go to the G major chord or sort of outline it. So when she goes, normally that would be, we've kind of resolved the chord and we're going to go back to 1. But here it never feels resolved. It just sounds like more tension. The other thing that I love that she does in the melody here, it's only right. I can't do it in falsetto because it's low in my range, but the sense of conviction is undermined by the fragility of the falsetto and that weird kind of note that she does there, which I think is absolutely brilliant use of the melody.
Lindsay had an amazing way of taking my songs and making them wonderful. When he was happy with me.
One last thing I want to point out about the lyrics. It's only right that you should play the way you feel it. There's at least 2 or 3 meanings that I could assign to this. Play, I can't help but think references the fact the song was written about her and Lindsey Buckingham playing music together. That was everything that their lives revolved around. But there's a lot of meanings layered in here. And when you listen to the song and you're caught up in it, you don't process this stuff intellectually. You don't stop and think, that word play, the use of this verb, let me just chart it on the whiteboard here. Could mean several things. Let me draw them out. Number 1, you don't listen to experience music that way. If you do, you're either analyzing it because you want to explain it to somebody, or you're not into the song. Like a heartbeat drives you mad. What the kick drum and the bass are doing is this kind of slightly altered heartbeat. Bum, 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 bum. They're not just keeping time. They're underlying the entire concept of the pulse that has kept this relationship together, the pulse that drives the song. Maybe I'm reading too much into it. Now listen to the swell before the chorus and the backup vocals with this high G. The chorus, first of all, isn't the kind of big production, dramatic moment with lots of emotional peaks that you usually expect from a chorus. It doesn't build to a big chorus in a traditional way. About as big as it gets is Mick Fleetwood's crash cymbal, which he puts on the second beat of that first bar. Thunder only happens when it's raining. And then surprises you by putting it on the first beat of the next phrase, players. His drumming is so understated and supportive of the songs. It's very easy to underestimate Mick Fleetwood, but the guy is like, your thigh bone that supports most of your weight. He's just a rock. He and John McVie on bass are just an incredible rhythm section, and he really picks his moments to add accents and never gets in the way or detracts from the main focus of the song. Listen to these isolated vocals that this engineer is going to walk you through on the chorus.
Oh, thunder only happens when it's raining.
What we have here is Chris and Lindsay doing the main lead vocal, and Stevie doing 2 harmonies.
They will come and they will go. When the rain washes you clean, you'll know.
And now we're onto the bridge. So listen to how Lindsey Buckingham approaches this. He's got all the gear and chops in the world. He could do anything. Incredibly subtle, never goes out of character here. And also the orchestration becomes very, very sparse, very quiet, kind of hushed. I guess a principle that underlies this whole song is you can get someone's attention by screaming, but you can also get their attention by whispering. And that's kind of the whole approach of this song. Second verse.
Now here I go again, I see crystal vision. I keep my visions to myself.
Again, there's a layer of mystery in here. Stevie never tells us what the visions consist of. A subtle thing that happens in this verse is we shift from speaking to her partner in the first verse to speaking about or to herself in this verse. Now here I go again, I see the crystal vision, I keep my visions to myself. This sets us up for what's about to happen in the next 2 lines.
We're surely me who
This moment is so subtle and it absolutely haunts me. She's talking about herself and says this line, "It's only me." That kind of fragility, that high falsetto sound. Who wants to wrap around your dreams? And what does it mean to want to wrap around someone's dreams? When you have this kind of ambiguity in the lyrics or multiple possible meanings instead of something that can only mean one thing, it gives your imagination, your subconscious, something to chew on. You can kind of come up with these possible interpretations. You're more free to assign your own life experience into the story of the song and kind of inhabit it. The line that kills me above all, "Do you have any dreams you'd like to sell?" Her voice kind of becomes even softer and almost tremulous. It's the most haunting moment in an incredible performance. It's like a question she doesn't want to ask or doesn't want to admit to thinking. And then when we get into this repeated, the B section or the pre-chorus, "Dreams of loneliness like a heartbeat drives you mad." For some reason, I read this version of the chorus, even though the words are identical, as speaking to herself or about herself. I think probably because she's directed our attention inward to her and inside her head in the verse that precedes this. It suddenly seems like she's gone inward on this, and it isn't talking about him having dreams of loneliness, but her worried about her own loneliness if the relationship ends. And we end with this kind of mysterious chord, F major 7 with an added B, or F major 11, depending on how you want to look at it. You don't need to know anything about music technically to feel that there's a sense of a lack of resolution in that chord that sticks with us long after the song is over. I thought of several songs that use minimal chords and vague harmony to good effect. But the other song I want to look at is also a breakup song that has a lot of similarities to Dreams, but which uses some other tricks to get into your head and never leave. This song was released in Australia and New Zealand on July 5th, 2011. It topped the charts there and in the UK and US, and reached the top 10 in more than 30 other countries.
And the Grammy goes to... I love this song. Somebody that I used to know.
It remains one of the best-selling singles of all time.
Guys, if you love Goat, I don't know if you say Goat Ye or Goaty. I don't know.
Maybe Goaty, Goat.
Anyway, if you guys love Goaty, go ahead and smash those like buttons.
But it's almost impossible to separate the song from the official music video that premiered at the end of that month. This video patiently, quietly unfolds the story of a breakup, letting the song and the performances do most of the work, but underscoring it with the symbolic set and body painting that was actually designed by Wally's father. The video was brilliantly directed by Natasha Pincus.
It's diligent planning and just a little bit of magic, I think, that got us through.
And as of this recording, has racked up over 2 billion views. It's also been reinterpreted, re-recorded,
like when you said you felt so happy you could die,
riffed on, reacted to,
now and then I think of all the times I screwed fans over,
parodied, and gloriously mangled. Any song that inspires that kind of enthusiasm and creative participation is worth a closer look. Now, without the slightest idea how his life was going to completely change, in January of 2011, Wally DeBacher quietly set up a recording studio in a barn next to his parents' house and set about writing and recording the album that would be called Making Mirrors. He started with a sample from a 33 RPM record of the first bar of Brazilian guitarist Luiz Bonfá's tune, Seville, looping it, adding other instruments, writing the first 2 verses and chorus. Where Stevie Nicks uses ambiguity and works in this kind of dreamy language, appealing to the subconscious, he seems to be speaking in a very straightforward way.
like when you said you felt so happy you could die. I told myself that you were right for me, but felt so lonely in your company. But that was love and it's an ache I still remember.
very first line tells us we're talking about a relationship that used to be. It's one person's story about their side of the breakup and the relationship. Not dissimilar to Dreams, the instrumentation under these verses is really bare bones, even more bare bones in this very first verse. There are all these subtle little details that come in the second verse and building on throughout the song. But even though there are actually 60 tracks in the final mix of the session, it never sounds very busy. It never sounds cluttered.
You can get addicted to a certain kind of sadness, like resignation to the end, always the end. So when we found that we could not make sense, well, you said that we would still be friends, but I'll admit that I was glad it was over.
Everything drops out except that little guitar sample. The purpose of it is really to set the stage and heighten the impact of the chorus when it just explodes with the first change of emotion we've heard in the song. Rage about everything. He's really exposed here, both emotionally and musically. There's no supporting harmony. He's put himself at the top of a usual tenor range at a B flat and C, which is really high even for first tenors. So there's, again, a kind of vulnerability associated with that. He doesn't use falsetto. He's belting. He's using full voice on this. Up through these first two verses, everything is pretty much the same. I'm sad and I'm angry about the way you treated me as we broke up. You said we could be friends, and then you just cut off all communication. There really are not a lot of surprises at this point in the song. So here's where things get interesting. Gotye had written precisely this much, and then he was stuck. He didn't know what else to do. It's catchy, it's good enough. Fortunately for us, he dug deep and he came up with an inspired idea. I wonder what would happen if we asked the other party what they thought about the same situation. This is why we're sitting here talking about this song 12 years after it was released, instead of just another forgettable breakup song.
Now and then I think of all the times you screwed me over.
She mimics him by using the same words. Now and then I think of all the times you screwed me over, la 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 la, little flutes, la 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 la. And she even imitates that very kind of fragile, soft delivery, the way that he sings that first verse. There's a great trick that he pulls here.
But I don't wanna live that way.
The first two verses repeated this same form, but when she delivers her verse, she sings the first two, and then something entirely new happens that doesn't happen at any other point in the song. We lean on this C, what we call a pedal tone, where we just grind on this note, and she's like,
but I don't wanna live that way.
Reading in every word you say.
You said that you could let it go.
And she's keeping her voice under incredible constraint, and you don't hear her take the big breath that it must have required to deliver this last line.
You said that you could let it go, and I wouldn't catch you hung up on somebody that you used to know.
The whole song explodes into something completely different. The somebody you used to know that really matters here is the person you were still hung up on while we were in a relationship. That's the reason we're in this situation. Yikes. Whereas Stevie Nicks is kind of playing at a subconscious level, but a uniform mood throughout, he completely flips the whole thing against the narrator, who we've assumed was reliable, kind of like the way we assume first-person narrators are reliable in movies. He brings someone else's perspective in there and completely turns the story on the narrator. There's this glorious moment where she's just exploded with this revelation, and now the question is, how's he going to react? If she's spoken the truth, it essentially means that everything he's been saying has been a message from his subconscious that's been trying to make him see that there's a destructive pattern here that he himself is responsible for. So this could be this incredible opportunity for him to break out of this pattern if he'd listened and said, well, I guess you're right. Thank you so much for that revelation. I'll never be the same. Thank you so much, Kimbra. I'm a new man. Can we get back together, by the way? Okay, maybe that won't happen. It's not going to be that easy. He just doubles down and he belts out the chorus even louder, just the same accusations, the same gripes. Kimber is clearly still trying to deliver the message until she just starts to give up and move away. And then is painted out of the picture. Painted out of the relationship. As he's voicing his same complaints, it starts to go softer, and by the end, it's almost like he's whimpering it. I used to know somebody. It's such a shame that the song was such a mega hit that it has overshadowed everything else Gotye has done before and since. He's no one-hit wonder. I hope that you go and check out the rest of this album and his other work. Wally DeBacher is an incredible songwriter. He deserves a second listen from you.
If you see my reflection in the snow-covered hills where the landslide will bring it.
It was unfortunate that we all had to be together to get over it.
And if you see my reflection in the snow cover,
you would like to be able to go away and get over it and then come back.
hills.
And we did get over it.
Well, maybe the landslide will bring it down. Well, the landslide will bring it down.
We got over each other. It took a long time, but it did happen.